tremendous opportunities for Canada, and I would say to Southeast Asia, and you've heard me say this before, come to Canada. I mean, we're here at the Milken Institute. We're talking about capital. So much of the capital today is talking about where is it that they can actually find places for global diversification. I would say Canada is a great place, because the other thing we hear from so many of the capital investors here is they're looking for predictability. They're looking for countries that can, that they could invest in. And right now, there are a lot of really terrific things to do with Canada. But speaking about Southeast Asia, last week, President Prabowo was in Canada. He and Prime Minister Carney signed the Canada-Indonesia Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, so free trade deal with Canada and Indonesia. This is really excellent. I know a little something about that. As the former trade minister, I led those negotiations. So there's great opportunity there between Canada and Indonesia, of course, with this new deal, but also the region and broadly within CPTPP, because many of the countries who are Canada's trading partners within that agreement are also a part of this ASEAN. So you can see that this is a real great environment for Southeast Asia to think about North America. But I would say think of Canada in that North American equation.
You talked about CPTPP. Is this a good opportunity to expand it even further, include countries like China, so that everybody can band together and benefit from greater coordination in trade policies?
Well, I think that having been the chair of CPTPP a couple of years ago, the decisions for accession will ultimately be among all the partners, and therefore, does it make sense for all of the partners? One of the things that was really important to all of the CPTPP partners that they were very proud of is that the agreement is a high standard agreement. High standards on the environment, high standards for workers, really good market access, and also looking at you as a trading partner. Are you a good, consistent trading partner that also respects the rule of law? I think that is what makes CPTPP so strong, because if you look at countries today, they're looking for predictability. They're looking for that market access. They're looking for dispute settlement mechanisms that they can rely on. That's what investors, that's what companies are looking for as well. And I think those private sector companies are going to say to their countries, let's make sure that we have access to these markets that are really good, but ensure that there is that stability, because that's what's actually, that's what will work for us.
Many countries are negotiating with the U.S. with China in mind. We have the likes of Mexico making concessions, imposing tariffs on Chinese products as a way to get a better deal with the U.S. Do you see Canada going the same way, or forced to go the same way?
Well, I mean, the North American market is so integrated. I mean, we have had in Canada, we call it CUSMA, in the United States, we call it USMCA. But this is a trade agreement between our three countries, and in fact, between Canada and the United States, that have been going on for decades. Our supply chains are incredibly integrated, and it has served our economies well. We have seen tremendous growth in our businesses and jobs for our workers. That type of integration will necessarily require us to think about the cost inputs that make up that trading relationship in sectors like auto, as an example. And we will always, I think, in Canada, think about both trade being fair, but also one that is also open and trusted as well.
Talk to us about where trade negotiations are from where you're seated. I know you don't have a front row seat, but you do understand the negotiations happening right now. We've heard from Mark Carney's point person saying it is not the dead end in terms of the tariff deal. They're still optimistic. The best case scenario, how would that look like?
Well, all three countries now have launched consultations about the review that is due to come up in 2026 of this agreement. It's a review. It's not a renegotiation. It's a review. That's what's actually in the agreement itself. I think there's an opportunity there to really look at what really works really well, and what is it that we should be looking at a little differently. I would also say that today, Canada continues to enjoy tariff-free access through the USMCA because it's USMCA compliant. That bodes well for our industries. At at the same time, we are seeing 50% tariffs on really important industries like steel and aluminum and forestry, softwood. So we are going to have to work with the United States those tariffs are just unacceptable, and we're going to need to work on those, and I know that the government is doing that. But today, you're seeing Prime Minister Carney also look at trading relationships with other trading partners that Canada benefits from really excellent relationships with, whether it's the United Kingdom or whether it's the European Union. Of course, last week it was Indonesia in Canada, but this region in particular as well. The Prime Minister, I believe, has plans to be here for APEC and ASEAN. And I think these are just opportunities for Canada to continue doing that work of diversification, while at the same time ensuring that we continue to participate in our very important relationship that is North America. But diversification is something that this government is very committed to, and you're seeing the Prime Minister do that work right now.
Diversification is great, but you also require a deal with the U.S. It was supposed to happen in August, and now there's a lack of clarity when that might be. What's the cost to Canadian trade, and what's the cost to the Canadian economy if we don't see a deal anytime soon?
Well, I know that the government is working hard on that. They're going to have to work very hard to bring some certainty to Canadians with the United States. But today, Canadians are seeing that just simply because, over 80% of our trade with the United States continue to enjoy USMCA tariff-free access. So that is good for Canada. So in terms of a general rate, Canada still is leading the pack that way. No question that the government is going to have to try to land something to create that certainty for Canadian businesses and workers. They expect it, and I know that the government is working hard on that, and that work just has to continue.
Could there be a regional response? You talked about how Prime Minister Carney will be headed to ASEAN in Malaysia in October, and he's looking to diversify. He's looking at negotiations with the countries in this part of the world. Could there be a response from these countries to counter what's happening with the U.S.?
Well, I think the very fact that we are, that the work that has happened now over years by Canada and its commitment to this region, and this work continue to deepen the commercial and the diplomatic relationships in this region, just simply means that ambition for diversification, what we can do together, what we can do bilaterally, means that it puts Canada and indeed our trading partners in a better position, because that is essentially what diversification has to mean.
Globalization at risk, obviously. Can the WTO play a role? Is it playing a role right now?
I think the WTO should absolutely play a role. I was just there a few months ago. This is their 30th year. The question I asked was, if we didn't have a WTO, would the world create it today? And the answer is yes. You need a set of rules. You need a rule book to deal with just the practical things like export restrictions and how to provide transparency to that, how to make sure that the ease of goods and services are able to move across borders. Those are the things that are under the hood, but the WTO is actually working in that respect because that set of rules are there. Does it need modernization? Does it need rules to fit our purpose today? Think about AI. Think about the environmental climate transition. Those are very real in many, many markets across the world. And we either have a set of rules that we've all negotiated, that we can live by, but it does need work. And I would hope that everyone continues to stand up the rules-based system so that we have something that we as a world are able to work with.
The supply chain that's getting disrupted now on the back of Trump, is that permanent? Or do you see the supply chains getting back post-Trump in 3 or 4 years' time?
Well, I think what I'll do is reflect from what I'm hearing here at Milken. I mean, you're listening to a number of companies, a number of investors, and they've been throwing out terms like, well, you know what? Of course we do work with the United States, but now can we look at United States +1, United States +2 or 3, which really means that how do we look at those supply chains? Can we rely on what it was, or do we just simply modify, get creative, create backup and then another backup? And I think that that's actually here to stay.